Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here and welcome back to the Recording in a Home Music Studio course. In this video, we're going to talk about setting up the session. So, setting up your session, right? It's pretty much the first thing we need to do other than coming up with our idea. So we've got our idea locked in, hopefully. And now we're going to get started, almost started with the recording process. But before we can actually start recording, we need to have our session, our project, our song, whatever you want to call it, set up in our software. So we're going to get our software open, we're going to get it all set up, and basically we're going to create our template, I guess we'll call it. And we'll maybe even save it as a template. But we want to get it all laid out as best we can with all the tracks that we believe we're going to need, the tempo we believe our song is going to be, and all the components in there so that in the next couple of videos, when we get to it, we're going to actually be able to start recording because our session will be ready to go. It will be saved as a template for future projects, plus it will also be saved as this song ready to start adding our tracks into. So let's go and have a look at the process and let's get our song or project set up now. All right, so let's get our session set up now for our song, and we're going to go obviously into Cubase, which I've done here, and I'm going to go new project, and I'm going to just create an empty one, and I'm going to find a folder. So we're going to then come back here and I'll create a new folder. I'll just place the new folder here, and what I'm just gonna call it Home Music Studio Song. All right, so we're going to go in there. That is our folder. So we're going to select that folder. Okay, and we've got that. So what I'm going to quickly do now is I'm going to do a save as and call it the same thing. Home Music Studio Song. So it's saved now, and that's good. Okay, now what I want to do first off now is I'd like to set the tempo. So F2 to open up my box here. All right, so we're going to turn off this feature here because I'm not going to use a tempo track. Well, not at this stage anyway. If we need to add one, we will. And then we basically just double click in here and set our BPM. Now, based on what I recorded before in my iPhone, testing out, when I sort of listened back to it and just tapped along with a metronome, I basically came up with two options. I came up with either roughly around 120 beats per minute if I did the beat fast, or I could sort of go with roughly a half time or something like that, and it was about 60 beats per minute. Now, because it's sort of a slow melody, I'm thinking of setting it to 60, but you know, either could sort of work, but it depends on how you want to design your drums and everything else. I'm going to go with 60 because the song to me is slow, even though I could have done it at 120, but that's probably double speed if I did it at that. So we'll set that to 60, and that's good. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. We've got our tempo set, our BPM set. Just shrink this window down a bit. Okay, and this is obviously totally empty here, right? We've got nothing. It created this folder, which has just got the main output. And what we probably want to do is set up our inputs and outputs on our thing. Just make sure we're using the right interface. I'm going to keep it on this one here. This is purely because of me doing these screen captures. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change it to my correct one. And now I'm just going to set up my inputs and outputs, which I have for my default settings here. Okay, now I continuously save. That's the sort of person I am. I just save over and over and over again. Every time I do something significant, I save. So now what we can do in theory is start setting up our tracks. So you might want to decide to start adding some various tracks. I think what I'm going to do is I will add most of my tracks as I go. But what I will do right now is I'm going to add an audio. And I have to leave it at that. It won't actually let me set no. Okay, I'm going to go with stereo for this one, and I'm just going to send it out the main output. And this is going to be my rough, okay? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be placing my iPhone recordings onto this track here. Now I'm actually going to take the input away, have no input because I don't need an input. And that's set up to there, right? So we're going to be putting our audio on here. But what I also want to do is probably set up some buses and some things like that just in preparation. Now I'm not going to go over the top with these because this is all about recording, and I want to leave a lot of the stuff for the mixing side of things, but I am going to create some. So in Cubase, we create groups, and I'm going to go with stereo. And the first one I'll set up is, I'll sort of set up a mix one outside, and I'll call that our mix bus. So we've got our output set to the focal monitors, and this is basically our bus. Now what we can do is we can change the color. So if I hold Control and click just over here, I can set the color to anything I like. Now I have some predefined colors, and you'll see here it says Mix Bus. So I'm going to click on that. And that sets that color for the mix bus. So you can do it from here as well. You have some colors, and they all sort of have names against them, depending on how you've set them up. Now what I'd also like to do is add a few more buses. So I'm going to again do some stereos. This time I'm going to set them to go to the group mix bus. And I'll say outside folder. I won't include a folder yet. And actually I won't give them a name. And we'll go with 7 for the moment, and let me just run through what I'm going to do. So I'm going to color code these all to this green color, which I'm using for buses. Okay, that was already green. That's green and green. So I'm just getting my colors right as well at the same time as what I'm doing. This rough here, actually I'm going to recolor this rough to something a bit unusual. I'll just go with that color there. It's not something I'd usually use. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is name these. So I'm going to call this the drum bus. And then we'll go with bass bus, guitar, spell it right, guitar bus. What else have we got? Keys. And percussion. Actually, we'll call it perk bus. Orc bus, And we could have a Vox bus. And we probably want one more. Which again, our color. BGV bus. Okay, this is just the way I like to set out my mixes as well. So if you don't want to go to this level in recording, you don't need to. It's quite, it's not a big deal. It's very easy to set these up though. And then what you will do as you create your tracks, you will route them to this bus. And the main reason I'm doing this now recording is because it does allow me to sort of solo. So if I have multiple parts and drums, I can solo them quite easily at this group level. All right, it makes it very simple just to solo or mute if I want to get rid of all the percussion tracks, especially if I've recorded multiple tracks. I just like to do that. Now, what I'd also like to do is put them in a folder. So I'm going to select all the tracks, and if I right click and move selected tracks to a new folder. Okay, so it's now put them under a folder, and I'm just going to give this color green. And I'm just going to call this buses. Right, so now I can collapse those and all looks good. So as I said, we will be creating tracks to go under here. Well, not under here, but we will be adding tracks as we record each part, and they will route to those various buses. So for instance, if I create a drum track, I'm going to set its output to go to the drum bus, and all of these are routing to the mix bus. So as an example here, if I pull up the mix window, just so you can see the routing, okay, we just hide the inputs and outputs. And let's hide all those. Oh, keep the rough. Right, so you can see all the tracks that we just created, and you can see the routing here. So we have all of these buses here, the green ones, are all routing out to the mix bus, which is this track. And this track here is routing out to our main speakers, our output. I've just got the rough going to the main output because I just don't really care where that goes, to be honest. I just want it to be heard, because it's just a rough when we're just using it as a guide, and that's about it. All right, so now I'm going to import my songs, my iPhone recordings, and I'm going to open up the pool. Now, just a heads up, I've had to convert the files to MP3s because it doesn't like the M4A version that iPhone seems to do. So I've already done that, and we're going to import. I'm going to copy all files to the project folder and convert if necessary. Okay, so it brings them all in, and I just tried to estimate some tempos here, but that doesn't really matter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag them onto this track. I'm going to go one track, so they're all going to line up across there, and we can make that bigger so you can see all the various recordings there. Okay, if we play, it would play along, but the reason you won't hear it, let me just save, is because of this audio interface. If I switch over to this one now, the whole bit, we'll do the whole bit. Okay, so you can hear there's me talking because this was done while I was recording the video. So what we can do is we could trim this up. whole bit. We'll do the whole bit. So let's say we want to trim to just say there. And we'll just drag it back, but we'll just check it again. Okay, so maybe we'll just trim that end off there, and that's fine. So let's just go to the next one. Again, we're going to have a clunk. And we'll just trim that off. Bring this over. Going to assume that's all noise. Okay, we seem to have possibly a couple of duplicates there, but anyway, that doesn't really matter. The main thing is that they're in and they are working. All right, so again, I'm going to save it. So this is going to get us ready for our next step where we want to start recording and whatever else we're going to do, create our rest of our parts. These are obviously just our roughs. These will get deleted further down the track and whatever else. Now, if you have a good idea of what you want to do in your song, then what you might want to do is pre-set up a lot of tracks. So for instance, let's go down here. Maybe I want to add, several audio tracks. I'm just going to go with mono and just add them to the guitar bus, for instance. Okay, so add, get 5 tracks down here, and then you might want to start calling them guitar 1, guitar 2, okay, guitar 3, etc. You get the point. Color code them, so pick a color. I have red for my guitars. And then I might put them in a folder. Right, so same concept, move selected to a folder. Call them guitars. Color code that, the red as well. And then you can shrink it down. Got a couple of extras here. But that might be then create your vocal tracks, create your whatever else, send them to a different bus and have them in a folder and set all that up prior if you wish, right? That's if you know what you want to do, and then you can save it as a template. Okay, so you'll come up here, obviously do a save, but then you can do a save as a template. The only thing is when you do the save as template, you probably want to do it before you put these audio files here, because otherwise it can include that in the template. Okay, because it will include them. So you create a name for your template and then you're ready to go for future recordings. As part of this course, I'm obviously not going to do that. I'm going to leave these all removed at the moment, because I'm going to add them as we do the work. So I'm just going to have my buses and I'm just going to have my rough. So we'll add everything else we need as we go and just keep this fairly simple. But Once you get to the point where you have a really nice structure and you're happy with the way that your track is laid out and everything else, if you remove all the audio, you can then save it as a template, and you can use that going forward for all of your new recording projects. All right, so we're going to leave our project here, and we will obviously come back into this and continue our song when we go to record our next or our first part, possibly drums, whatever we're going to do. We'll have to come in here and we'll record our first track in there, but we'll leave it as is for the moment. All right, so hopefully you have followed along there and you have your project, session, song, whatever you want to call it, set up in your software, ready to go. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below so that we can talk through any issues that you had in this or anything you didn't understand or that may be different in your software that you need to get worked out. Obviously, we want to get you ready to go, ready for recording in the next few videos. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.